Hello and welcome to the Mutual Fund Show. My name is Neeraj Chana. Over the next 30 minutes, we'll talk all about mutual funds. Well, more importantly, 3 or 4 key things that I think a lot of people need information on, need some explanation about, and that's what we'll try and do with our 2 experts. Kirtan Shah, CEO of Ambition Learning Solutions, and Amit Bivalkar, Director at Sapient Wealth Advisors, join us on the show. Gentlemen, thanks so much for taking the time out and speaking to us.
Thank you so much.
Just start off with a brief. I think it's on a lot of people's minds that what's happened in the recently released AMFI numbers seems to suggest that there have been not the most pleasant of inflows. In fact, say for the SIP book, which has been rock solid, otherwise the numbers have looked very, very dire. Are you guys facing difficulties or in convincing clients to start more investments? And on the contrary, have investors pulled out money as well? Amit, if I can start off with you.
I think looking at the numbers, I can only say brace for impact is what people should actually look at. And more importantly, are these SIP numbers also including the STP numbers? Because you don't get a STP number from AMFI at any point of time. So if you have 8,800 crores of SIP throughput which is coming in, and you have 1,100 crores of net sales in equity, including a couple of NFOs which are in the market. So definitely you had a 10,000, 11,000 crore worth of redemption. And this is to the fact that you have got a lot of money which came into mid caps as SIPs for the last 2-3 years, and they have not been doing well. So the investor experience probably is not good for those guys who started a SIP 2.5 years ago. And markets at lifetime high, but my portfolio is in negative or probably doing less than liquid fund returns. I think that might be prompting for redemptions. I don't think so. Profit booking is something which have taken a toll on mutual funds because there was no profit in the portfolio.
Kirtan, what about you? What have your clients experienced?
I think one thing that I have really realized over time is because of this mutual fund Sahi campaign that's been happening, a lot of these new investors have come into the investment pool and taken a mutual fund as one of their investment vehicles. Now, unfortunately, most of these guys who've either come through a mediator or have taken the online portals to come and do investments have really not had the experience of hand-holding.
Sure.
And again, taking forward the conversation that Amit made, what is happening is now that the markets are at all-time high, but unfortunately, most of these guys are not seeing that on their portfolio, and plus they are not hand-hold, right? Is making it very difficult for them to look at the larger picture beyond what can happen if they stay invested for another 4 or 5 years. Which is why I think I would like to second what he's saying. There's been a lot of pull-out happening. But again, my understanding is that a lot of people that are handheld in the investment process are sticking by, and those guys are not stopping their SIPs.
Yeah, well, SIP's numbers has looked okay, so that is actually a good thing. Okay, but let's talk about some of the key topics that we wanted to discuss. A lot of queries that have come around them. Now, we have the Bharat Bond ETF kickstarting tomorrow. What's your analysis? Should investors apply for this, and what kind of investors should apply? What kind of investors should stay away? Either of you can start.
So,
Yeah, please.
So my take on this is very simple. Anybody who's in the highest tax bracket should look at allocating some part of their portfolio to the ETF. And anybody who's in the 10-20% bracket have probably other options which are far better than this one is.
Why do you say that?
Now, why do I make this comment is, let's say, for example, today there are 4 categories of people who would generally look at investing in something like this. One is a fixed deposit holder. Another is probably a debt mutual fund investor. Third is an FMP investor in the mutual fund space. And fourth is somebody who's investing directly in the bonds. Now, for somebody who's investing in a fixed deposit, you in the bond ETF would have a very similar predictable opportunity given to you at this point in time. But the larger advantages are 2. First is liquidity, and another is returns are slightly higher post-tax. Is because in an FD you end up paying your slab rates. Over here you will get an indexation advantage. At the same time, somebody who's investing directly in bonds, this becomes a good opportunity for 2 reasons. Is because the ETF will give them a diversification, and at the same time the cost and hence the return is slightly superior. Third, somebody who's in the debt mutual fund investment space. So there are 2 categories that I would like to compare with the Bharat ETF in terms of credit risk. So you have in the mutual fund space something called as the banking PSU, and slightly off, but you still have a corporate debt portfolio. Now, if you do some analysis on all of these portfolios, you will understand that post-expense, all of these portfolios are in the range of 575 to 610, right? So the client is going to make 5.75 to 6.10 returns post-expense, which is also not predictable, which is the yield shown at this point in time. I think this makes a lot of sense is because a 3-year debt portfolio ETF1 is today roughly showing a yield of 6.7. And a cost of hardly anything, 0.005%, is 1 rupee of cost over 2 lakhs of investment. So I think this is a far superior option. One last thing that I would want to make is that even the FMP kind of investors who predominantly invest in FMPs because they want to lock a yield that they want to realize over time, there are 2 reasons why this can act as a better opportunity. First is, of course, the cost. Right, versus FMP and the cost that ETF brings on board, and second is liquidity. Now, why liquidity specifically here is because theoretically you would have a debt, an FMP also traded on the exchange, but generally you don't have liquidity. So if you really want to get out of an FMP, even if it is traded on the exchange, you don't really get an exit option practically.
But here you believe there will be an exit option?
Yeah, because I think they've made comments saying that they're going to have a market maker on board and hence...
But I mean, that's my problem out here. I mean, almost everybody that I've spoken to when I look at the other products available, right? Liquidity seems to be that one thing which is a concern for this product. And again, part 2, that almost anybody who wants to invest will need, I mean, they have the fund of fund structure, but otherwise you need a demat account to be able to do this.
Right.
Are there concerns surrounding this? Of course, and firstly, do you recommend?
So I think people who have hold to maturity kind of scenario, who don't want to look at their monies for 3 years and 10 years can definitely look at such kind of products. But we should not harp on cost because there are only 3 things, good, fast and cheap. And you can only pick 2. So good and fast will not be cheap. Fast and cheap will not be good, and good and cheap will not be fast. People generally try to say because it's cheap it must be good. So I don't think so. I subscribe to that. Second thing is that this is the first experiment in a debt ETF. So I would want to wait. I would want to see what is the difference between the actual NAV and the market maker. And if that is closer to the realizable value, then probably I'll be comfortable putting money. This essentially, Neeraj, is an institutional product, which probably the institutions will put money who have their 3-year and 10-year money to be put out of their PF and everything. A short-term product will definitely be of much more value to a retail investor if he wants to put his money for 3 years and then he'll get a better yield out of it. That's what my view is. And liquidity you will get through the exchanges. Only thing is, I would wait for the market maker to come closer to the realizable NAV. Second important point, they are doing a pure AAA portfolio. What happens if there is a downtrade? You still have a credit risk in the portfolio. Your NAV will take a toll, same as a normal short-term bond fund or a credit risk fund. How many retail investors will understand this?
Yeah, but I mean, I would just presume just one follow-up before we move on to the next thing. But one follow-up that if it's all a pool of AAA rated, the probability of the downgrade might be limited compared to the other option. And 2, I mean, they've been talking about this, that how the minimum investment is so low that this is apt for a retail investor who's currently investing in fixed deposits, but wants to have that higher return at almost similar safety measures.
2 large NBFCs were AAA last year.
Okay.
And that's my argument to it.
Okay, fair call. Well, from a purist perspective, this is not a wrong argument to make as well. So interesting, the thoughts out here from both our experts, and it gets launched tomorrow. Enough and more arguments made against. Remember, we've already done a show with Radhika Gupta as well as value research on how you can approach this product. So do try and log in, but it was important to get the perspective of both our experts today on this as well. The next piece, and when we did the analysis, not that other funds haven't done well, but it seemed that focus funds, because maybe of the narrow rally or otherwise, have done reasonably better than some of the other counterparts, YTD. Now, do you guys reckon, and this time around I want to start with you, Amit, on this, do you reckon that focus funds, even for 2020, might give better returns? What is making them do well? Of course, all funds won't do well, but generally as a category, what is making them do well?
So I think putting concentrated bets where your conviction lies is the actual mix and success of focus funds. Typically funds are at 30 or 35 stocks going up to 45 stocks, with the top funds at 65% of their portfolio in the top 10 out of the 34-35 stocks what they hold. So people had this acronym of RUTIK last year, HRITIK, which was HDFC and Reliance and ITC. And so I think more concentrated the rally, the more focused funds will do. So diversification will preserve wealth, focused funds will enhance wealth. Although if you look at the more what you can say developed markets, focus funds have not been outperforming large cap funds. So in India, since you don't have a perfect market and news don't travel simultaneously to everyone, I think over a long period of time, focus fund will still outperform a large cap, to my view.
In India at least?
Yes.
Okay. Kirtan, do your views differ? And both of you, do you guys have any focus funds which you believe should be a part of somebody's portfolio?
Yes, so just to give you a little background of what I think on this line is, most of these portfolios that we've looked at, let's say the funds which have given the highest returns over the last 3 years, all of these funds have 20 to 25 stocks in their portfolio. Now that is extremely highly concentrated. So if you look at the top holding that most of these funds had that we looked at were anywhere in the range of 9.5% in one stock. Like he said, the top 10 holding concentration is 65 to 70%. And even so, top 3 sector holdings is in the same range of 65 to 70%. Now we are saying that the portfolio at large is allocated to 10 stocks and 3 sectors at 70% of the portfolio, which is going to be very difficult unless the fund manager gets the call right. So looking at a situation where if the fund manager is not able to get the sector call or the stock call right, probably this will not really work in the client's favor. So we did some analysis over the last 5 years. So we looked at the top 10 months in which Nifty lost the most over the last five years. And we looked at the 10 months in which it fell most, and we could very clearly identify a trend that the top 5 focus funds that we are saying that performed the most over the last 3 years, they all lost more than what the Nifty lost. And doing the same analysis on a multi-cap and a large cap, multi-cap was very much in line with what the Nifty gave, and the large caps did better than what Nifty did, which very categorically makes me believe that focus fund is for somebody who is sophisticated and understands the investment risk. Because if I run the same analysis and which we did over a 5-year, 7-year horizon, focus funds have done better than multi-cap and large cap in that space. So for us, anybody who's looking at anything less than 5 years in terms of investment and does not really understand the risk between a multi-cap and a predominant focus fund should not really look at this space. Anybody who's looking at 5 years and above and understands the risk return potential can be a good bet as one part of the portfolio.
Okay, Amit, do you want to come in? And I would urge both of you to maybe share a name, if you can, or 2 of focus funds that you think are doing well and could do well. But Amit, so you wanted to respond
my
to this.
view is that we should not look at past returns on focus fund, because the categorization of these all funds has changed in June of 18. So you don't have empirical data to show that how these funds have done, because the construct of the portfolio was very different. So you have to look at, I would say, not a right argument, but I would say if somebody wants to do a concentrated PMS at a lower entry value, then you should look at focus funds. Otherwise, you have a large and multi-cap portfolios which you can do. And in terms of names, I think the league table keeps on changing.
Yeah, which is
so
why.
it will not be right to say which fund and for what reason.
Okay.
So I think over long periods of time, you take a dart and put on any fund. I think all funds are at 14%, 15% CAGR any which case.
Okay, well, that should probably give you some answer. Maybe almost any of these funds, when they enjoy a good period of time, could actually outperform some of the others as well. Frankly, for the last 3 or 4 years, I think Amit is right. The league table has changed and changed quite considerably as well. Okay, let's look at some of the other topics of discussion as well. And one of them has to be what should be an investor's debt portfolio strategy. Equity is discussed enough. Debt. And the reason why, and Kirtan, I will start off with you this conversation, the reason why it becomes important is that until last month, almost everybody believed that GDP being lower, rates will come off. Therefore, there would be some gains to be had even for a 12-month portfolio, let alone a 3-year portfolio. Those arguments will now change, and more so since the policy yields have moved up almost 28 basis points. Now, what changes would you make to an existing portfolio? What is the recommendation that you have for newer investments on the debt side?
Okay, so going by what MPC came out with, there are three major highlights that I would want to focus on to give my view on this. First is they made a point that PMI is bettered in November. They've said that they've increased their inflation trajectory from 3.5 to 3.7 to 4.7 to 5.1. And also, though they've reduced the GDP number this time around, but they also make a mention that probably the next year, first half, they are looking at GDP growing at 6.5. Now, if you look at all of these three things that they've mentioned, it was probably understood that the rate cut was not called for, right? Now, in such a situation, there are two things that I understand to look at from a debt portfolio perspective. Now, I believe that a portfolio with 18 to 24 months of average maturity and a little bit of credit risk will really do well over the next 3 years. Now, why do I make that comment? So, if you look at a debt portfolio today, so let's say the spread between term repo and a 2-year AAA is 160, 170 bips. But if you do the same thing of a term spread on repo and 2-year AA, the spread is 250 to 300 basis points. Now, if you extend that a little beyond that and do a 3-year, 5-year analysis of a term spread of repo and a 3-year and repo and a 5-year, the spread is hardly 10 bips or 15 bips higher than what an 18 months or a 2-year is offering, for which I would like to believe it does not make sense to take the duration risk for a 10 bips or a 15 bips higher return, whereas an 18 to 24 is at a sweet spot. Also at the same time, why do I feel that while we select a portfolio, a little bit of credit may really help, is because if you look at last year, so the spread between liquid and credit portfolio in the debt mutual fund space was again in the range of 170, 180 bips. Today, that same spread of liquid at 575 is roughly 450 and 500 basis points. That's the kind of spread at which a liquid and a credit fund today is at. And a lot of this credit related risk is, to my mind, factored in, understood, and people taking credit risk now probably understand that there are chances that things might go wrong and things are not similar to what it was a year back when people did not think that debt can have risk. So to my mind, any fund with an 18 to 24 month of average maturity, slight credit risk, and using the rolling down strategy can be the right investment to make for the coming 2-3 years.
The counter to that and wondering is somebody would say that if I want to take risk, I would not take the risk with a debt product, I'll take the risk on an equity product. So, and therefore, is that a fair argument? But it's up in the air, right? Some people want to mix the two and try and optimize returns as well with minimal risk. Yeah, sorry, you want to finish very quickly, but.
Yeah, so while I say risk, I am not actually focusing towards getting somebody to invest in a credit risk fund. All I'm saying is while we select the short-term fund 18 to 24 months, it should not be a problem if the portfolio has some bit of AA.
Okay.
Yeah, is what I meant.
Okay, good. Thanks for that clarity. Amit.
Somebody spoke to me last week and he said that fiscal deficit and CAD are like your English and maths marks in your 10th grade. If you get that right, everything else falls in place. If the government is trying to do that, and a slippage from 3.3 to 3.6 on fiscal is okay. I don't think so we should be worried about it. Where is the opportunity in debt? Your repo is at 515, your 10-year is at 650. I think you have got 135 basis spread there. Both are sovereign. I think that is what duration calls for. So you can have that as 1/3 of your portfolio. If you look at the MCLR, the bank lending rate, that's today at 8%. And if you look at the 3-year bond, it's at 660. There's 140 basis spread there. I think that calls for some credit risk also. So if you have a credit risk, a roll down and a duration play, and if you get all of that within one fund, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, I think that will make something which is very nice for the investor. Another point, return of capital and return on capital, these are two different things. So when people put money in credit risk, they expect a lot of return on capital. I think first is what return of capital, and as banks do, we should also do a SLR analysis of debt funds, wherein S is for safety, L is for liquidity, and R is for returns. So if you are a very conservative investor, don't get into any of this. Put it into ultra short and sleep or a low duration product. But if you have something wherein you aim for a 7.5% plus post-tax return, then I think a 1/3 duration, 1/3 credit, and a 1/3 roll down I think this combination will work in your favor.
Now, so let's just try and simplify because a lot of viewers will not understand this.
Yeah.
So let's assume people want the highest possible return at the best possible safety available. Let's assume somebody's willing to take that little bit of a risk. What's that ideal debt market mutual fund product that somebody should invest
I think
in?
a short-term fund with some credit exposure is what you should look at.
Okay.
Same here, low duration, ultra short term, low duration or short term with some credit exposure.
Okay, some credit exposure. And viewers, maybe ask your financial advisor about what are these funds. If you're convinced with these arguments, ask your advisor about what are some of these funds. If you are investing online, maybe write to us and we'll try and ask our experts to maybe respond over the course of the next 1 week on what some of these funds could be like. Okay. The next conversation, and there is an NFO which is slated to start or has started. It's from the Aditya Birla stable, and I was wondering if you guys have looked at that NFO, new fund offering, and wondering if it's a good fund to invest into. Amit, I'll start off with you this time.
Typically, NFOs don't add any great value to client's portfolio because you take 3 months to deploy, and might be if the markets go up, then you are not participating in the rally. Albeit, if you are investing in an NFO and you feel the markets will go down, they have 3 months to invest. But typically, going into a thematical fund, a sectoral fund is not what I think any of the advisors will take into consideration. And here we are talking of something which is completely dependent on the government. And you are banking on one refinery being sold, and if that is a success, then you are saying that everything else will be whitewashed. I think a 5% tactical call for most of the guys who are in the high risk, if they want to do, they can probably go ahead and put money into it. But typically, if you stay focused, if you stay large mid, if you stay multi-cap, I think they will capture these tactical themes as and when they come, rather than putting my money in a pure sectoral or a thematic fund. Not just this,
one?
anyone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Your views, Kirtan?
Completely concur. I think there are thousands of funds to choose from, and there is very little logic made available to invest in an NFO because you have absolutely zero understanding of what has happened and what can happen. Plus, at the same time, this is again goes back to the same argument that I made for focus fund also. There is going to be extremely high concentration on a particular sector, right? Thematic is something which is not meant for everybody, and probably a multi-cap or even a focused or a large cap basket should do much better in terms of risk return than taking up an NFO which is thematic.
So sector rotation, Neeraj, actually is well captured by a large cap fund or a multi-cap fund. And if the sector is in vogue, I think fund managers are smart enough to load their portfolios with these. So one should avoid sector, not only for this mutual fund, but any of the mutual funds. If you have a sector fund, I think one should avoid and stick to your core large cap, multi-cap focus kind of portfolio.
Viewers, remember, we will get in the Aditya Birla house to talk about this NFO as well a bit later on. But I think what our advisors are trying to say, it's not just against, or their view is not to not invest in this particular NFO from this stable, but against any thematic funds, because there are a lot of other options available in the mutual fund families, and therefore go out and invest in those as opposed to trying and taking bets on this. Unless, of course, you're so convinced about the PSU rally that it gives you a concentrated exposure and maybe higher returns if the move indeed works out. But yeah, it depends a lot on a few things going very, very right. Okay, gentlemen, appreciate you taking the time out and joining us today on this leg of the Mutual Fund Show. Thank you so much, Kirtan, as well as Amit.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
viewers, thanks for tuning into this leg of the Mutual Fund Show.